This meeting is being recorded.
Good morning to all the viewers. Now, today I am going to continue with the working capital management. I have already discussed in part 1 of my video lecture various aspects of working capital management, like definition, components, what are current assets, current liabilities, etc. Now, today we'll see the types of working capital. First one is the permanent working capital, second one is temporary or variable working capital. Now, permanent working capital, what is that? So, let me explain a little bit. Suppose we are considering a business's monthly requirement of working capital for 1 year. So, there are 12 months, January to December. Now, in these 12 months, there are different levels of working capital requirement. So, we have to keep in mind that what is the lowest requirement in any month? That is the permanent working capital for the business. Now, why lowest? Because if you think clearly that in a particular month, when it is lowest, that means in all other months, working capital requirement is more than that month. Say, for example, in the month of June, for any business, working capital requirement is 110 lakhs. And in all other 11 months, the requirement is more than 110 lakhs. So, obviously, 110 lakhs is the permanent working capital which is required in each and every month at least. Now, say in the month of March, working capital requirement is 140 lakhs. Therefore, what is the temporary working capital requirement? That is 140 lakhs minus 110 lakhs. That is equal to 30 lakhs, right? Now, let me show you one numerical example regarding this. You see, just a minute. Yeah, look at this slide. So, a farm in the peak season requires 30 crore working capital, in the off season 18 crore. That means 18 crore is the permanent working capital which is required in the off season. That is the minimum requirement. And peak season 30 crore. So temporary working capital requirement is 12 crore. 30 minus 18, 12 crore. So what example I have given month wise. So that is more clearly explainable. And I hope you have understood what is permanent and what is temporary working capital or seasonal working capital, right? Now, what is the what are the objectives of working capital management? Basically, the objective is to maintain the liquidity in the organization. We know that NWC, net working capital, it reflects the liquidity of an organization. And why it is required? It is required to ensure uninterrupted production and sales. These two are the main objective of working capital management in any organization. And if an organization can maintain the working capital in a proper manner can repay the working capital loan to the banks timely, then the organization can get further working capital loan from bank, maybe on a reduced rate. Earlier, say normal rate of working capital loan is 4%. So if the bank is happy by observing the proper working capital management of the organization, they may, for the subsequent loans, they may reduce that rate of interest because that business or the organization is a very good paymaster in terms of repayment of both interest and principal. So ultimately, it will reduce the overall cost of capital of the organization. Again, since working capital is the lifeblood of any organization, so if by good maintenance or proper working capital management, the organization can ensure uninterrupted production and sales as well as which will ultimately improve the profitability. So even in long-term funding, long term, even in raising the long term funds from, say, equity issue or long term bank loan, there are also long term, that is, debt instrument issue, that is, debenture. So, in that case, also, company can raise fund with less cost. Now, subsequently, in my other videos, I'll discuss in details about the cost of capital, what it is. But basically, just for the timing, you keep in mind that cost of capital means the weighted average cost of capital or overall cost of capital of the company, comprising the cost of equity, cost of preference share, cost of debt. Okay, so this is the best. These are the basic objectives of working capital management in any organization. Now, let me discuss the working capital cycle. Now, working capital cycle means from the slide you are finding, that is, a company at the first stage holds cash by which they purchase raw material. So, raw material inventory is created, then work in process inventory is created, then finished goods inventory is created, and when at each and every point working capital is remaining blocked to some extent because raw material, unless or until it is coming out of the warehouse and going for production, the working capital is remaining locked in the form of raw material. Now, in work in progress inventory, certain amount of working capital naturally remains blocked until and unless they are converted into finished goods. And in the form of finished goods, working capital also remain blocked there until they are sent to the market for selling. Now, these finished goods can be sold in two ways. One is credit sale, one is cash sale. So, if there is cash sale, so company can directly recover the cash by selling goods. And if there are credit sale, then the debtors are created as I discussed in my part one discussion. So When debtors will pay, say after 2 months or 3 months, as per the credit term, then the cash will be realized. And when cash will be realized, with that again, organization will purchase raw material, then WIP, then finished goods. So in this way, the cycle will continue. Now, operating cycle equal to inventory holding period plus receivable period minus payable period. So what is that? That we'll discuss in details a few minutes later. Okay. So now let us discuss about two more things which are not in this slide, but I will definitely incorporate those slides in my part 3 lectures, that is permanent working capital and sorry, uh, demerits of surplus working capital and inadequate working capital. That I will discuss in my subsequent slides. So before that, we must know about various determinants of working capital. So what are those determinants? Let me see. How much working capital will be required for a business or a firm? That exclusively depends on industry and operational parameters. So first, let us discuss about the nature and size of the business. So nature of the business means for any manufacturing organization, working capital requirement is obviously more than the service organizations. And size of the business, it is easy to understand that where the business is of large scale, there obviously the requirement of working capital will be more than the medium or small scale business. Okay. Now, next we can say the production cycle. Now, production cycle, it comprises of starting of the production with raw material, purchase of raw material, then conversion of raw material into WIP, then conversion of WIP into finished goods. Now, for example, if everything is smooth and the system is running as a smooth, oily machine, then automatically the raw materials will not be stored in the warehouse for a long time. It will come to the warehouse, will stay there for 2, 3 days or 4 days, or max to max 10 to 15 days, and it will be taken into production floor for production. And if the production people, that is the who is basically known as the direct operators, if they are efficient enough and the system is efficient enough, so automatically, starting from raw material to finished product, this cycle length will be reduced. It is what I'm telling you, this is about the manual production process, but if it is automated, automatically the production cycle will be reduced to a great extent, right? Now, if the production cycle is short, in that case, working capital blockage in every form, raw material, WIP, finished product, it will be less because the finished product will be manufactured quickly and it will be sent to the market for sales. That is the normal process of cash sale or credit sale. But at least the production cycle is short, so company will be able to send their product first to the market for selling as well as for recovery of cash. Right? Next, there is another point associated with this, which is called business cycle. Now, every business passes through two phases minimum. That is, one is upswing, one is downswing. Upswing means when the business is in boom phase, obviously requirement of working capital will be more for production, for more demand, to meet more demand. And if the business is passing through downswing, that means it is in recession. So demand will be less, production will be less, working capital requirement will be less. It is as simple as that. Next is production policy. All these things are related to production. Now, production policy means, say, for a woolen garments company, the example I have already given in my part 1 lecture, that is, say in the peak season, if they think that they will produce at a very high level and around the year in the off season, they will not produce or produce at a very low level. So what happens? The requirement of working capital around the year, except the peak season, it remains low. And in the peak season, all on a sudden, the working capital demand will be very high. Requirement will be very high. But if the organization thinks that, okay, I'll not wait for the peak season, but around the year I will go for uniform production. No problem. So in that case, working capital requirement will be uniform around the year. Now, what happens if the company adopts the first policy, that is producing very high in the peak season? Then, all on a sudden, the working capital cost, that is the interest rate, it may be high. But if they maintain the uniform production process, so cost of working capital loan may be at the standard level. But okay, you may say that when in the peak season they are taking high loan and in the off season they are not taking working capital loan to that extent. So interest cost of working capital loan, it should be balanced. Yes, it may be. But we are discussing about the requirement of working capital. So depending on the two types of production policy, what I told, so requirement will be as per the production volume, right? Next, let us come to another important part, that is the credit policy. Now, credit policy, basically, here we are concerned about the credit terms. Now, if a company to compete with its competitor in the market extend its credit term, say from earlier 2 months to present 3 months or 4 months, automatically working capital requirement will be more, because think about the working capital cycle. In the debtors, working capital will remain blocked for a longer time. But company cannot affect its production because of delayed collection from the market, from the buyers, from the customers. So they will have to arrange the working capital as usual. And pressure will come on working capital requirement, working capital arrangement. But if the credit term is standard, what the company maintains, usually, then all on a sudden the pressure will not come. So it depends on how the company is setting their credit standard. If the company finds that, say, 2 months credit policy or credit term is not enough to get the customers, they can try for 3 months or 4 months. And in this cutthroat competitive environment of business, when we all prefer to go for buying on a credit basis, so we will be happy, customers will be happy to get longer credit period, right? So in that case, it depends on the company's policy, what they will follow. So these are very important parameter for determining the working capital requirement. Then there is another point, that is, if the company wants to go for growth and expansion, so working capital requirement will be more, which is easy to understand. Then there is another point, that is availability of raw material. So if the company's factory is located nearer to the raw material source, automatically there will not be any need to go for high storage of raw material in the warehouse. So company can save working capital investment by storing lesser raw material. Again, we can say if it is a very far off source of raw material, so company, to keep its production process uninterrupted, they must keep sufficient level of raw material stored in the warehouse, where working capital will remain blocked to a great extent. So source of raw material, availability of raw material, that is a big factor. Again, in this case, I may say another example. I may give another example. That is, say, the company has got an urgent order, and for that, they need more raw material. So, their regular supplier may not be able to supply that much of raw material within the time frame given by the company. So they will have to search for some other supplier who may charge more because of emergency supply. So in that case, working capital requirement will shoot up all on a sudden, and company will have to arrange for working capital very quickly to serve their customers. Otherwise, they will lose their goodwill in the market. That may hamper their future business plan. So all these are interrelated. Okay. Now, next one is say inventory turnover. So inventory turnover is basically how fast all types of inventory, basically the raw materials and finished product, they are going out of the warehouse for their respective uses. Raw material will come to the production floor and finished products will go to the market. So inventory turnover, if it is high, in that case, more working capital will be required. But side by side, it may be that if there is a proper synchronization of inflow and outflow during purchase and inflow during sales, if it matches properly, then no need to go for more working capital arrangement. The standard working capital management will be enough. But say in other cases, I'm giving another example, companies producing, but their finished products are not moving to the market for sales. Like 2 3 months back, all of a sudden there is a reduction in demand for the product. So in that case, there is a chance of severe mismatch in synchronization of inflow and outflow. So in that case, requirement of working capital will be more because production process company cannot stop. But sales is not generated so fast. So recovery of cash is not so fast. So additional working capital arrangement company will go for. Company will have to make it, right? Now, seasonality of the business already we have discussed. Now, price level. Price level is another important factor, specifically, say, before and after budget. Now, before the budget session, generally what happens if a company apprehend that their raw material price may go up, so they will be eager to store more and more raw material before budget, generally. But what happens even if the raw material they are buying at low cost, means the standard cost, existing cost, they cannot be able to increase their finished product price for their customers immediately. So then this type of storage of raw material earlier at existing cost will be beneficial for them. But anyhow, that storage will be wiped out at certain point of time. Therefore, they will have to buy raw materials at the escalated price later on. But still, immediately they cannot increase their sales price. So at that time, the working capital requirement will be more for the company in either cases. Then operating efficiency. When I discussed the production cycle, basically operating efficiency is included in that. Because if the direct operators are efficient enough in case of manual production, then working capital requirement will come down. Pressure on working capital will come down. And if it is automated, so automatically companies using advanced efficient production process, so requirement of working capital will come down. Then there are one more thing, that is profit margin. If the company's profit earning is standard or it is increasing steadily, then it can be a very good source of working capital. So external borrowing for working capital or dependence on external borrowing will be less. Then dividend policy. If the company declares dividend which is declared out of profit, so in that case profit will be eroded, and then the dependency on external arrangement of working capital will be high. Then last, another important area is hazards and contingencies. So it is advised that at any point of time, any company, any business may face this situation. They may face hazardous situation or some contingent liability may come. So in that case, generally it is advised to add 10 to 12% on the actual working capital requirement calculation. So if, say for example, working capital requirement after calculation it comes around 2 lakhs. So company should keep it at least 2 lakh 20. 10% of 2 lakhs means 20,000. So adding that, they should keep the requirement measure to tackle the contingent situation. What is hazardous and contingent situation? Suppose company has got a good export order. Company has manufactured as per the order, it is stored in the godown. All on a sudden there is a flood or fire. Stock is destroyed. But for export order, time maintenance, punctuality of delivery, that is very important to maintain the market share or to get the further order. So company has to arrange for raw material, has to arrange for extra labor. So all these will require huge amount of working capital. Say company has to supply, has to manufacture the same order in the same volume within 15 days, 7 to 15 days. So you can easily understand what is the pressure on the company and how they will have to arrange for raw material at its urgency, labor at its urgency, right? With extra payment to the labor, with extra price for the raw material. So that is hazardous and contingent situation for the company. And if the company already add up 10 to 12% on their standard requirement,